Clarisse Dela Cruz and Victor Tan looked like the perfect couple, a beautiful young nurse and a wealthy Singapore millionaire. But behind their flawless smiles and luxury lifestyle hid a deadly secret. What began as a fairy tale romance would soon unravel into a shocking story of greed, betrayal, and cold-blooded murder, all for $10 million in life insurance. Clarisse Dela Cruz arrived in Singapore in 2016, full of hope and determination. At just 25, she had left her small town in the Philippines to work as a nurse in one of Singapore's private hospitals. Her patients loved her for her kindness and soft-spoken nature. She worked long hours, saved every dollar, and sent most of her earnings back home to support her parents and younger siblings. Her life was simple, but her dreams were big. She often imagined owning a small house for her family one day, a future far away from poverty. It was in this hospital that she met Victor Tan, a 52-year-old millionaire businessman. Victor was a regular patient, known for his charm and expensive taste. He had built his wealth through luxury car dealerships and property ventures, but behind his success was a deep loneliness. Recently divorced and without children, he found himself drawn to Clarisse's sincerity and humility, qualities missing from the glamorous world he lived in. Their relationship grew quickly. Victor would visit the hospital more often than he needed to, just to see her. Soon, he began sending flowers, inviting her to dinner, and showing her a side of life she had never experienced before. For Clarisse, it felt like a dream, a kind man offering her the life she had only seen in movies. Within a year, they were married in a quiet beach ceremony on Sentosa Island. Friends and co-workers celebrated her fairy tale romance, calling her the luckiest woman in Singapore. Victor promised her the world, and for a time, it seemed like he had given it to her. But as the months passed, the fairy tale began to fade, and beneath the surface of their perfect love story, shadows were starting to form. After the wedding, Clarisse moved into Victor's luxurious penthouse overlooking Marina Bay. It was a life beyond her imagination: designer handbags, weekend getaways, and fine dining at places she could never afford before. For the first time, she didn't have to worry about bills or working double shifts. Yet, with every passing week, she began to sense the hidden cost of her new life. Victor, once charming and generous, slowly revealed a controlling side. He wanted to know where she went, who she spoke to, and how much she spent. What had once felt like protection now felt like surveillance. Clarisse tried to please him, hoping things would return to how they were in the beginning. But Victor's suspicions only grew stronger. He would check her phone messages, question her late returns from the grocery store, and accuse her of lying about her past. The penthouse, once her dream home, began to feel like a cage made of glass and gold. She felt trapped between fear and dependence. The tension deepened when Victor found out Clarisse was sending large amounts of money to her family in the Philippines. He called it betrayal, claiming she had married him only for wealth. Clarisse stopped defending herself and instead began to think silently, carefully, about her future. Then she discovered something that changed everything: Victor's newly updated life insurance policy. It named her as the sole beneficiary, worth $10 million. That revelation lingered in her mind like a whisper she couldn't silence. She began to imagine what freedom would look like. No controlling husband, no fear, no limits. The nurse who once devoted her life to saving others was beginning to consider a plan that would destroy one life and completely change her own. In August 2019, Clarisse and Victor planned a weekend getaway to Bintan Island, Indonesia. To friends, it looked like an attempt to rekindle their troubled marriage. Clarisse told her colleagues that Victor had been distant and angry lately, but she hoped the short trip would help them reconnect. The couple arrived at the resort on a sunny Friday afternoon, checking into an exclusive oceanfront villa. They were seen smiling at dinner, appearing like any ordinary couple enjoying a romantic escape. No one suspected that the trip would end in tragedy. The next morning, Clarisse was seen leaving the villa alone, claiming that Victor had gone for an early swim. When he didn't return, she raised the alarm, crying for help as resort staff began searching along the shore. Hours later, the body of Victor Tan was discovered floating near a rocky cove not far from the resort. His head bore a deep wound, and his wristwatch was missing. Authorities initially ruled it a drowning accident, suggesting that Victor may have slipped on wet rocks. Clarisse's grief appeared convincing. She fainted during questioning and broke down repeatedly. The police accepted her story, and she was allowed to return to Singapore with her husband's ashes. Days later, she filed a claim for the $10 million life insurance policy, saying she wanted to honor his memory by supporting hospitals in his name. But whispers soon began to circulate among Victor's business partners. They found it odd that he had traveled without his usual bodyguards, and that Clarisse insisted on arranging the trip herself. The more they thought about it, the more things didn't add up. Behind the image of a grieving widow, a quiet suspicion was beginning to grow, one that would soon unravel everything Clarisse had carefully planned. When the insurance company reviewed Clarisse's claim, they noticed several inconsistencies in her account of the events on Bintan Island. She had given 3 slightly different versions of how Victor entered the water and could not clearly explain the timing of his disappearance. Investigators began to look deeper, uncovering that the life insurance policy had been updated only 3 months before the trip, with Clarisse listed as the sole beneficiary. The company's internal fraud unit flagged the case and contacted both Singaporean and Indonesian authorities. Soon, a joint investigation was launched. Forensic specialists in Indonesia re-examined Victor's remains and discovered traces of a strong sedative commonly used in hospitals. Clarisse had access to the same drug through her work as a nurse. The discovery changed the direction of the case completely. It was no longer viewed as a simple accident, but a possible homicide. Detectives obtained search warrants for Clarisse's devices and uncovered alarming evidence. Her internet history included searches for poisons that dissolve in water, how to make drowning look accidental, and sedative overdose symptoms. Resort CCTV footage revealed her leaving the villa at 4 in the morning, dragging a large suitcase toward the beach and returning nearly an hour later without it. When police searched her Singapore apartment, they found Victor's missing watch hidden in a drawer and faint traces of blood on one of her travel bags. More damning was an unbooked flight ticket to Manila scheduled 2 days after the insurance payout was due. Authorities concluded that Clarisse had planned everything in detail, from administering the sedative to staging the drowning and escaping with the fortune. Her arrest came quietly at Changi Airport, just as she was preparing to flee. Clarisse's trial began in early 2021 and quickly became one of Singapore's most publicized cases. The courtroom was filled with journalists, curious citizens, and even foreign reporters drawn by the scandal's shocking mix of love, money, and murder. Prosecutors presented her as a cold and calculating woman who saw her husband as a ticket to wealth. They revealed the online searches, the sedative evidence, and the timing of the insurance policy changes. The image of the grieving widow shattered as the truth slowly surfaced. Witnesses described Clarisse's strange behavior after Victor's death. A resort staff member testified that she appeared unusually calm when told her husband was missing. A financial expert showed how Clarisse had quietly transferred thousands of dollars to offshore accounts weeks before the trip. Her meticulous planning suggested she had long intended to kill him. The defense, however, painted a different story. They argued that Clarisse had lived under Victor's emotional abuse and constant control. They claimed she only gave him the sedative to calm him after an argument, and that his death was an accident, not murder. The defense insisted she was desperate, not evil, a woman who made a tragic mistake under pressure. The jury deliberated for 2 days before returning a verdict of guilty for premeditated murder. Clarisse showed little emotion as the sentence of life imprisonment was announced. The $10 million insurance payout was voided, and Victor's assets were returned to his family. Today, Clarisse remains behind bars, her name forever linked to betrayal and greed. Her story, once seen as a fairy tale of love and success, became a chilling reminder of how ambition and desperation can twist even the purest heart into darkness.